On January 28, 2024, a political earthquake shook West Africa as Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, three Sahel nations led by military juntas, announced their withdrawal from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. The leaders, Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, Colonel Assimi Goïta of Mali, and General Abdourahamane Tchiani of Niger, declared their decision as a sovereign move, citing ECOWAS's deviation from its founding principles, and accusing the bloc of becoming a threat to its member states and populations. Frustrated by sanctions and what they saw as foreign-backed interference, the trio accused ECOWAS of failing to support their fight against terrorism and external influence. In a joint statement, they declared a desire to forge their own path, prioritizing sovereignty and regional security. The withdrawal was precipitated by escalating tensions between the three Sahel nations and ECOWAS, particularly following a series of military coups. Mali in 2020, Burkina Faso in 2022, and Niger in 2023. In response to these coups, ECOWAS suspended the countries and imposed sanctions, including border closures and asset freezes, aiming to pressure a return to civilian governance. The juntas criticized these measures as illegal, illegitimate, inhumane, and irresponsible, arguing that ECOWAS failed to support their fight against terrorism and insecurity. The exit marked a dramatic shift in West African politics, potentially weakening ECOWAS and signaling the rise of a new alliance rooted in anti-colonial sentiment and military-led governance. In the wake of their departure, the three nations decided to come together and formed the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, a confederation established on July 6, 2024, to enhance cooperation in defense and foreign policy. The AES aims to facilitate the free movement of people and goods and plans to establish a joint investment bank. This new alliance reflects the country's shift away from Western influence, as they have severed military ties with former colonial power France and increasingly turned to Russia for support. While ECOWAS has expressed openness to dialogue, the three nations have reaffirmed their decision to leave as irreversible. A 6-month grace period was agreed upon, extending the effective withdrawal date to July 29, 2025, in hopes of facilitating further negotiations. The departure of these key members poses challenges for ECOWAS, potentially weakening its influence and raising concerns about regional stability and security. Following the creation on Confederation of the Sahel state, what would actually happen if these three countries were to merge and form a single country? What would that look like, and what impact would it have for Africa and the world? While there is a possibility that this might never happen, we are just curious as to what will actually happen should these three nations merge to become one. What would it be like, and how will that affect the dynamics of the African continent? For starters, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have a few things in common. They are all in West Africa. They share borders. They were all colonized by France, and they all speak French as their official language. Should these three countries merge to form a single country, the country will most likely be called the Federal Republic of the Sahel. This will reduce the number of sovereign states in Africa from 54 to 52, and the Federal Republic of the Sahel will become the newest country in the world, followed by South Sudan, which became a sovereign state in 2011. Geographically, the new country will have a surface area of 2,781,415 square kilometers, becoming the largest country in Africa and the 8th largest country in the world, ahead of giants like Argentina and Mexico. Though the country will be extremely vast, it would still be landlocked, with zero access to the ocean. However, its borders will stretch from Benin to Libya, which is a strategic Sahelian corridor. The country will have a population of about 70,498,000 people and would be the 5th most populated country in Africa and the 20th in the world, ahead of countries like France, the United Kingdom, and Thailand. Its population density will be 87 people per square kilometers, making it one of the most sparsely populated countries in the world. The most populated cities in the country will be Ouagadougou, with close to 3 million people, followed by Bamako, with over 2 million people. The country will be ethnically very diverse, with a very youthful population of averagely 18 years. The official language of the country would still be French, since all three countries already have French as their official language. However, since all three countries have anti-French ideologies, they might dump French as their official language and adopt either Hausa, Fulfulde, or Bambara as their official language. Their politics would likely be dominated initially by military leadership. Given that all three are currently ruled by juntas, a transitional government could form, possibly featuring a rotating presidency among the leaders to balance power and prevent rivalry. The country might adopt a federal system to respect the ethnic, cultural, and regional differences across the vast territory. Early politics would likely be heavily nationalistic, with strong anti-colonial Pan-African themes. Drafting a new constitution would be a priority, but risks of internal power struggles, factionalism, and regional tensions would be high. Civilian political parties could emerge over time, but military influence would remain strong for years. Internationally, the new state would distance itself from traditional Western alliances, aligning more with Russia, China, and other non-Western powers. Stability would largely depend on unity among leaders and real progress on security. Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso will be the president and head of state. Colonel Assimi Goïta of Mali will be the prime minister and head of government, while General Abdourahamane Tchiani of Niger will be the minister of defense. Let us know in the comments if you agree with this positioning, and if you disagree, also let us know why. The capital of the country would be Ouagadougou, because it is already the headquarters of the Confederation of Sahel states. Bamako and Niamey will both be the economic capitals of the country. Talking of economy, the country will have a nominal GDP of $71 billion, becoming the 13th largest economy in Africa, ahead of countries like Tunisia, Uganda, and Libya, but still behind Kenya, Tanzania, and Ethiopia. While the nominal GDP per capita will be $870, still making the country one of the poorest in the world. If Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger merged into a single country, their economy would face both major challenges and opportunities. Initially, the new state would inherit a fragile economy heavily reliant on agriculture, gold, and uranium, with limited industrialization. Poverty and unemployment rates would remain high, and infrastructure would need massive investment. However, pooling resources could create economic synergies. Combining gold reserves, uranium mining, and fertile agricultural zones could boost exports. By creating a common market, easing trade barriers, and developing joint infrastructure projects, the country could strengthen regional supply chains. Severing ties with the CFA franc and creating a sovereign currency might provide greater financial independence, but risks early instability. Strategic partnerships with Russia, China, and Turkey could inject much-needed investment. In the long term, if security improves and governance stabilizes, this merged Sahelian state could emerge as a key player in West Africa's economic and energy landscape. Should these three countries merge, its military would become one of its strongest and most defining institutions. Combining their forces would create a large, battle-hardened army experienced in counterinsurgency, desert warfare, and guerrilla tactics. Given ongoing conflicts with jihadist groups, the military would remain the central pillar of the new government, enjoying high public prestige. A unified command structure would be necessary, likely blending leaders from all three former national armies. Russian advisors, Wagner Group elements, and partnerships with countries like Turkey and Iran could further modernize their capabilities. Priority would be given to creating specialized anti-terror units, air defense systems, and border security forces. However, challenges would include integrating different military cultures, rivalries among commanders, and limited budgets. Over time, the new military could emerge as one of the most powerful forces in West Africa, shaping both domestic politics and regional security dynamics. Religion would play a major role in its social fabric, but the population would remain largely unified in faith. About 90 to 95% of the population would be Muslim, mostly Sunni, with strong Sufi influences, especially in rural areas. Islamic traditions would deeply influence culture, education, and governance, though most citizens would favor moderate interpretations rather than radical ones. Around 4 to 8% of the population would be Christian, both Catholic and Protestant, mainly concentrated in Burkina Faso. A small fraction, about 1 to 2%, would practice traditional African religions or indigenous beliefs, often blended with Islam or Christianity. Religious coexistence has historically been strong, but the rise of jihadist violence could challenge this harmony. The government would likely promote religious tolerance officially, but Islamic culture would dominate public life, holidays, and political discourse in the new Sahelian state. Tourism would hold immense potential, but face serious challenges at first. Due to security concerns from ongoing insurgencies, current tourist numbers are extremely low. Each country now receives fewer than 100,000 visitors annually. Combined, they might attract around 200,000 tourists per year initially, mostly aid workers, diplomats, and adventurous travelers. However, the new nation would boast incredible tourism assets: ancient cities like Timbuktu, Mali, breathtaking deserts like the Sahara in Niger, vibrant cultural festivals in Burkina Faso, and UNESCO World Heritage Sites. If stability improves and infrastructure develops, tourist arrivals could easily grow to 500,000 to 1 million visitors per year within a decade. Ecotourism, cultural heritage tours, and desert expeditions would be major draws. Strategic investment in security, airports, and hospitality could turn the Sahelian Republic into a rising, adventurous tourism hotspot in West Africa. The country's external relations would shift dramatically toward non-Western alliances. The new Sahelian state would likely distance itself from France, the European Union, and ECOWAS, criticizing them for past interference and sanctions. Instead, it would deepen ties with Russia, leveraging military and security support, and strengthen growing relationships with China, Turkey, and Iran for economic and infrastructure deals. The country would seek membership or close partnerships with organizations like BRICS or the African Union, promoting a Pan-African and anti-colonial agenda. Relations with neighboring coastal West African states could be tense, especially those aligned with ECOWAS or Western powers. However, the new state would also position itself as a regional security leader against terrorism, offering military cooperation to allies. Overall, its foreign policy would be fiercely independent, strategic, and focused on building sovereignty and new global alliances. Now let's look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of these three nations coming together. Advantages. 1. Political strength and sovereignty. A unified state would have a stronger political voice on the African and global stage. Together, they could assert greater independence from foreign influence, especially France and Western powers, and promote Pan-African ideals. 2. Shared security and military coordination. All three countries face terrorist threats and insurgencies. A merger would enable the creation of a centralized military command, better coordination, intelligence sharing, and a stronger defense strategy to stabilize the region. 3. Economic integration and resource pooling. Each country has unique resources: Mali, gold; Niger, uranium and oil; and Burkina Faso, cotton. Combining their economies could create a diversified and stronger economic base, reduce dependency on imports, and boost local industries. 4th, Pan-African inspiration. Such a merger would symbolically challenge colonial borders and inspire other African nations to consider regional integration, promoting African unity, solidarity, and self-reliance. 5. Larger market and labor force. The new country would have a population of over 70 million people, providing a large internal market, opportunities for industrialization, and a sizable workforce for development projects. 6. Unified infrastructure development. Cross-border transportation, energy, and communication projects could be streamlined, enhancing trade, movement, and economic activities within the new state. Disadvantages. 1. Ethnic and cultural complexity. The region is home to diverse ethnic groups and languages. A merger could risk marginalization or ethnic conflict if governance is not inclusive and sensitive to local identities. 2. Leadership and governance conflicts. Determining who leads the new country and where the capital will be could cause tension between the current ruling juntas. Power-sharing arrangements may be difficult to establish peacefully. 3. Institutional challenges. Merging 3 different legal systems, bureaucracies, and governance structures would require a complete overhaul of institutions, which could take years and may create confusion or inefficiencies. 4th, economic imbalance and regional inequality. Niger is less developed compared to Mali and Burkina Faso. Disparities in infrastructure and services could create regional dissatisfaction and hinder national unity. The 5th, international backlash and sanctions echo ways. The African Union and Western nations may oppose the merger, leading to sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and the withdrawal of foreign aid, which would further strain the economy. 6th, security vulnerability. During transition, the focus on political restructuring could be exploited by terrorist groups to increase attacks and expand influence, destabilizing the fragile regions even further. To conclude, we would like to ask a question. Do you think it will be wise for these 3 nations to merge? Or do you think they are better off as just allies? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and let's continue the conversation from there. Before you leave, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notification so you don't miss any of our videos. Also, do not forget to like this video and share it with your friends. See you on our next one.